Let's start this review off with a question that I'm willing to bet not even 10% of the people watching can answer. Who's heard of the Brak show? Think I'm talking shit, don't ya? Yeah, pretty much what I expected. But fear not, for I've come to bestow my knowledge upon you simpletons about this golden egg. But first, have some history. In 1994, Cartoon Network adapted the Hanna-Barbera superhero cartoon Space Ghost into Space Ghost Coast to Coast. The goal was to make an animated late show like Jay Leno or David Letterman. The show was actually a hit and spun off two other shows, Cartoon Planet in 1995, and of course, The Brak Show in 2001 on Adult Swim. The Brak Show follows Brak and Zorak, two of Space Ghost's villains who were featured in Coast to Ghost and Cartoon Planet. The two live with characters literally named Mom and Dad. I'm being serious here, as they go about their days getting into numerous shenanigans. Now, their ages are unclear, but they are stated to be high school students. However, it's best not to question the logic this show employs. To really get a good grasp on this show and what it's like, I'm going to review their third episode, Time Machine. With that out of the way, it's time to roll. This episode starts out with Mom and Dad discussing what they want to have for dinner. Mom hasn't cooked anything, so Dad decides to take the family out to Fish Packets for one of their annual dinner specials. Mom calls out to the duo who are upstairs playing a video game called Head Kicker. Brak gets the call, and they go downstairs to the kitchen.
Well, what have you boys been up to all weekend?
We've been playing Head Kicker.
I've been playing. You've been getting a red-ass beatdown.
And now's a good time to explain the dynamic between Brak and Zorak. Brak is the innocent and naive one, whereas Zorak is the douche who picks on him. This dynamic was done to death in the 2000s to mixed results, but this show nails it for a couple of reasons. For one, Zorak is evil. They don't even play it off with some bullshit about how he cares about Brak deep down inside or anything. He's an evil bully who's proud of his miscreants. He's still a character we're supposed to like, or at least find funny, but they are being plain with his character instead of giving us a sugar-coated mess that contradicts what we see on screen. 2. Brak never lets Zorak's bullying get him down. In fact, there are times when Brak even gives lip to Zorak, this one included. That's how you do it. When one character in a duo is less likable in universe, their shittiness shouldn't have any significant effect on those around them. And if it does, they have to fail in the end. And when Zorak's shittiness is grand scale, it always ends badly for him. Dad tells the guys to get ready to go to Fish Packets, which prompts Brak to sing a song about how it's his favorite restaurant.
All of the wonders of the sea will be served up hot to me. Baked or broiled or lightly breaded, just the thought makes me lightheaded. There be a smarter sauce in a bowl of tartar sauce. Fish Bucket, there I come.
Yeah, Brak sings a lot in this show. Now, normally this might be a turnoff, but what helps in this case is that Brak's songs are short, and while they're supposed to be bad, Andy Merrill still has a good singing voice. Cringe comedy like this should annoy the characters, not the audience. Brak is then questioned by Mom if he finished his homework, to which he sheepishly replies no. This leads to Mom telling him that he can't go, and by extension Zorak can't go either, because you know for a fact he didn't do his homework either. Brak begs for his parents to let him go, and Dad decides to tell Brak a scary story, all the while Zorak uses the bathroom in the background.
Zorak, I thought you were going to the bathroom.
I did.
Oh, dear.
This is probably a good time to leave.
This is actually a brilliant joke, because you don't even realize that Zorak was pissing and or shitting himself in the middle of the kitchen. You just heard him making a bunch of noises while Dad tells his story, so it sounds like Zorak is reacting to that. Anyway, Mom and Dad go to Fish Packets as Brak mopes about his envy.
You go ahead, Dad. He's on the poop deck. Rub the magic clam. Get your picture taken with Gary Grouper. See if I care. 'Cause I do.
What's the big deal? Fish Pocket sucks, homework sucks, everything sucks.
Hey, you should have done your homework too, bub. One more F and you're going right back to grandma prison.
Zorak! I'm strung up right again! From me too, boy! Zorak! I ain't going back there. I can't.
No, I have no idea what Grandma Prison is, and the episode doesn't explain it either. But that's the beauty of it. Brak sings a song yet again, lamenting that he can't go to Fish Packets, and after Zorak remarks about how they'll need a time machine, Brak mentions that he has the key to Thundercleese's time shed. As they go there, we get treated to this beautiful exchange.
Hey, Zorak, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, what?
Where are we going to find enough squirrels to make a kite?
Are you really that stupid?
I swear, the fact that more people don't know about this show has to be considered a war crime. They go back to Friday and coax their past selves into going into the future and doing their homework for them, while the present ones just play headkicker all day. This goes about as well as you think it would.
My head! Oh no! This is a time where they talk about going to fish pockets! Fish pockets? Let's eat! We can't! We didn't do our homework! Man, all I gotta hear is, welcome to fish pockets, sir. I'm ending your party. I say, that's me! We're not going, Brak! But I'm hungry.
Yeah, all four of them just ended up playing headkicker the whole time. And then we get a whole musical montage of them attempting the same thing. This keeps going until the whole room is overloaded with past Braks and Zoraks.
Wait a minute, this ain't working. Nobody's doing the homework.
I haven't eaten in 25 days! Me either! Somebody feed me! We're never gonna get to fish pockets!
This episode has no visible time lapses, so I'm gonna have to take them at their word that they've literally been ripping their past selves from history for almost a month and somehow haven't caused the timeline to implode. I think Chronica should take notes from these guys. Brak says he wishes homework never existed, and Zorak tells him that they can always just go back in time and prevent homework from being created. In the past, they meet two wizards named Merlin and Marlin, who are inventing a bunch of shit. They pose as the presidents of the future and successfully convince the wizards not to invent homework. When they get back to the present, they see homework was never invented, but neither was fish packets.
Let's get the fish pockets!
Fish a pocket? What are you talking about, son?
I'm talking about fish pockets, my favorite restaurant!
Brak, your favorite restaurant has always been Lord Wellington's Beef Trapeze.
Really? That sounds pretty good.
I love how this is the only instance of messing with history having any sort of negative consequences on the present. I'm guessing Merlin and Marlin also invented fish packets? Who knows? Anyway, we're treated to a blatant instance of we didn't know how to end the episode.
Life is too short to worry about eating and making kites from animals. Better to use your time for the schoolwork. Only at the school, of course. And maybe you'll grow up to be someday the president of the future. Or you could be snatched up by a gigantic terrible bird and torn limb from the limb on a lonely mountaintop. Do you understand what I'm saying, son?
Yeah, buddy!
Yeah, it looks like they forgot to return all the past Braks and Zoraks to the original timelines. But either way, that was Time Machine. This episode gets an easy 9 out of 10 from me. I know that sounds like a hasty judgment, but there legit is virtually nothing wrong with this episode. Some people might consider the constant music gags to be padding, but they really don't last long enough for me to think so. The only problem I can find with it is that the story does take a bit long to get started, thanks to a joke Brak makes about one of his pants packets being haunted, but that's really it. The rest of the jokes are just perfect in how they land. That's really the strength of this show. It wants to be a pure comedy, and knows how to be such. I might return to the show again to examine another of my favorite episodes from the show. Here we are, finally taking on the subterranean Bab of Sponge. I was hoping to take care of this show until I was at least 10 reviews in, but I figured that'd be a bit too arbitrary, and that it's better to just say something when I think it needs to be said. Anyway, SpongeBob needs no introduction. It's easily the single most popular cartoon of the century so far. Even during its low point, people were still hearing and talking about it. And I'm sure long after its inevitable conclusion, its influence will remain as strong as ever. That said, I was still hesitant to go after this show, not nearly as much as I am with Family Guy, but that's another story. Because I don't want to come off as all the other dumbfucks who take this show way more seriously than they need to. Well, that, and much of this show has been dissected several times over in the last decade alone. So I'm going to try and go after the episodes that have been mostly left as they are. And this time, I'll be covering the Season 4 episode, All That Glitters, which is a rather notorious in its own right. This episode starts out at the Krusty Krab, where a customer orders a special item called a Master Krabby Patty, which apparently no one's ordered in forever. The mere announcement of this fact is enough to frighten the entire restaurant. Well, except Squidward anyway. SpongeBob tries to flip the thing, but it's a bit too heavy, and his spatula gets split in half. And we're treated to 40 seconds of SpongeBob crying about it. It's a bit amusing, but 40 seconds? Really, guys? I might sound like I'm nitpicking, but that's a longer time than it sounds. SpongeBob's spatula is shipped out to the hospital, and Mr. Krabs tells him to get back to work.
Work? How can I go back to work without without spat.
Use another spatula.
What? There is only one spatula for me, and that is spat. Spat! Wait up! Spat! Oh, I'm coming.
Gotta love how Mr. Krabs isn't even surprised by SpongeBob's ways anymore. SpongeBob visits his spatula in the hospital, and we're shown a montage of all the memories SpongeBob has of him and Spat's good times to set to a song that is definitely not Can't Smile Without You. Wow, you'd think he'd take better care of a cooking tool by not using it as a back scratcher or sticking it under the couch. Kinda making me reconsider wanting to try Krabby Patty there, Spongeboy me bab. Okay, hold the fuck up. You mean to tell me that he's willing to get into a sword fight with a pirate using spat, meanwhile he has an emotional meltdown over it getting broken? Wouldn't he want to keep it in good condition then? Like, I get that this particular part is supposed to come out of nowhere and the fight scene itself is pretty cool, but it does create a bit of a plot hole. Just saying. A doctor comes over and tells SpongeBob that he should give consideration to a replacement spatula.
Go home. Get some rest. We'll try to do everything we can.
Thank you, Doctor.
Oh, I'm not a doctor. I'm an actor researching for a role. Yes! Woohoo! I am so totally gonna get this part.
Okay, now I'm curious as to how many patients he faked out on all day. That malpractice lawsuit should be a fun one. SpongeBob despondently leaves the hospital and contemplates how he'll get a new spatula.
Replacement spatula? How could anything ever replace... Hey, look at that!
Well, he got over that fast. He lays his eyes upon Lay's spatula and appears to be taking a liking to its design. However, he's still conflicted on whether or not he should actually buy it. But then he remembers the fake doctor's words.
I would give serious consideration to a replacement spatula.
I love how SpongeBob still heeds the guy's advice even after learning he isn't a real doctor. He finally decides to buy Lay's spatula, but he learns that it costs a fortune. So much so that not even his entire net worth is enough to cover it. However, the salesman turns it over to him in exchange for SpongeBob's clothes. And this is where things might be a little uncomfortable. SpongeBob spends the remainder of this episode butt-ass naked. Like, surely you couldn't have just kept him in his underwear, could you? Nah, instead I gotta sit through this whole middle finger to my pupils. He gets to work and shows off Lay's spatula to Mr. Krabs and Squidward. However, his hopes are dashed when it's time for him to actually start making Krabby Patties, and Lay's spatula keeps avoiding the grill.
Spat, is there something wrong, pal?
I would not dare touch such slop as this, how you say, Krabby Patty. I am designed for the utmost in culinary cuisine, no less!
You're a fucking spatula! Your main purpose is to flip beef on a grill. You're bound to get greasy at some point. What, you mean to tell me you can only be used for tuna tartare? But yeah, it turns out Lay's spatulas actually get a bit of an attitude and begins insulting SpongeBob. The security system takes control of Lay's spatula! Oh wait, that's not right. Lay's spatula spouts legs, denigrates SpongeBob some more, and runs away never to be seen again. It's at this moment that SpongeBob decides he needs to go get Spat back. Back at the hospital, it looks like Spat isn't doing too hot, and ends up flatlining. Then the fake doctor comes to see him with some bad news.
I know. He's moved on to that big kitchen drawer in the sky. He's gone.
Actually, it's not that. I didn't get the acting part.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, by the way, that's not your spatula. Your buddy's all patched up in the infirmary.
So, is the hospital just using him for free labor now? Jeez, the labor laws in Bikini Bottom really do suck. SpongeBob goes to see Spat, and Spat doesn't seem to be in a very forgiving mood. One thing I should probably mention is that this whole scene plays out like SpongeBob cheated on Spat or whatever. SpongeBob starts crying again, even harder than before, and they hold at it. In fact, this is the only thing they do to try and break up the pace.
All that glitters is not gold.
That explains the title card. So SpongeBob inchworms all the way to the Krusty Krab in the midst of his sobs and is pleasantly surprised to see Spat flipping patties, purely autonomously. Good thing Mr. Krabs isn't seeing this or else SpongeBob will get canned. You don't get to pay a spatula after all. So yeah, they reunite and Squidward puts in another order for a Master Krabby Patty. I guess they're popular again now? SpongeBob tries to flip it, but instead his arms just break off his torso, which he laughs at. And that was all that glitters. Oh boy, this one, I'm rating it a 4 out of 10. It really is not at all very interesting. I appreciate how seriously they try to take such a ridiculous premise, but the execution is just bad. All it is just SpongeBob being taught a lesson he didn't need to learn. It would have worked better if the episode was a bit more lighthearted and didn't make SpongeBob out to be some asshole simply for wanting to do his job properly. Or hell, make it so that SpongeBob willingly tossed out Spat in favor of a spatula for the express intent of trying to look cool or rich or some shit. Instead, all I'm getting from this is that you should never replace anything even if it doesn't work anymore. Which, now that I think about it, explains why they decided to put this episode out. You guys remember when I used to rage about sexism? Yeah, well, we're doing it again today. And boy, do I have quite the specimen. Let's talk about the Fairly OddParents. The Fairly OddParents has gotta be the most tragic Nicktoon ever. There are several contenders for that title, but this one wins it for me, and I'm sure for many others as well, since the show is, for all intents and purposes, iconic. It ran for 16 years, and went through a worse seasonal rat than SpongeBob. Just throwing episodes at our faces that showcase severe character derailment and total disregard for the world building and series concept. But one problem that persisted all through the show's lifespan was gender norms. And they sure indulged in them to the point where this might have well have been All in the Family, but if we were supposed to like Archie Bunker's prejudice. The show loved portraying women as neurotic and men as incompetent, with both of Timmy's guardians being animated boomer comics in every episode. The episode I'm examining today, Desperate Without Housewives, is widely considered to be the most egregious instance of gender stereotypes the show has given us. But is that infamy earned, or is it mere hyperbole? I guess we'll find out soon. This episode starts with Mrs. Turner knocking on the bathroom door asking if Timmy remembered to turn out the water while he was bathing. She opens it, and an entire ocean spills out of the bathroom, indicating that he did no such thing. Timmy says that his mom was nagging him about everything. Cosmo says that he agrees with Timmy since Wanda nagged him about yelling into a megaphone all night. Get used to that, cause it's the theme here.
Timmy! Look, I caught a skatefish. Grill this baby up and we've got ourselves a little piece of heaven.
Remember when Mr. Turner's stupidity was actually charming and not cringeworthy? After Mrs. Turner asks one of them to take out the trash, Mr. Turner calls for a man meeting in the living room. Then Cosmo appears because he's an idiot.
Timmy, who's the loud floating guy?
This is Cosmo. He's from a town where there's more, gravity. So over here, he, floats.
That does not make sense. I'd question you, but I don't want to be a nag like your mother.
Yeah, then you might actually have to keep the concept of your show intact. But I guess you aborted that mission long ago. Mr. Cracker reveals to have been hiding in Timmy's house all this time because he's sick of his mom nagging him. Oh, and he notices Cosmo. Guess the joke they go for.
Oh, hello. I assume you're visiting from a town with more gravity.
Nope, I'm a fairy.
Ha! Good one. Your friend's a real card turner.
Talentless roaches. At least try to surprise me.
I wish there were no women around to nag us, but that's silly. Wishes don't come true unless there's some way to grant them.
Using fairies!
Why are you guys panicking? Cosmo flat out told Cracker that he's a fairy, and Cracker just laughed it off. He's obviously none the wiser here. So Mr. Turner wishes that there would be no women for 24 hours, and Cosmo grants it. Every woman in the universe disappears, and the guys celebrate the fact that they can do anything they want now. You know, this episode reminds me of the Season 3 episode Love Struck, where Timmy wished away all females because he couldn't find love. Now, I'm not saying the show ran out of ideas, but the show ran out of ideas. And I don't see this one panning out much better. 5 minutes later, the house is a disaster area because the men don't know how to take care of themselves. You know, just like that other episode. Now Timmy wants dinner.
I'm hungry. Can we have dinner?
No problem, Timmy. I can make dinner. I'm not a moron. Honey, we're ready for dinner. Oh no, the magic words don't work.
Okay, I know you're an idiot, but you literally watched every woman ever vanish. You were even convinced it was all your doing.
I want to go home, but without Mother to drive me, I don't know where I live.
What about that surveillance van you drive occasionally? Pretty sure you were doing that all by yourself. Timmy tells Cosmo to bring all the women back, but the batteries in his wand are dead. Honestly, the wand physics of this show aren't even worth comment anymore. So they have no choice but to stick the wish out for the whole duration. Then with zero prompting, we get introduced to these anthropomorphic crocodiles called the Snobulax. Turns out they're upset that their wives are gone, and now they're unable to take care of themselves too. As revenge, they're going to destroy the Earth unless they're given a formal dinner party. They decide to stall the Snabulax for the remaining 24 hours with entertainment, aka Cracker telling tragic stories about his life. Really, it's the only mildly amusing part of the episode, even though it keeps up the trend of nothing happening. Eventually, the Snabulax fall asleep, but Cosmo's an idiot and wakes them up by shouting into the megaphone, angering them. It's Mr. Turner's turn to distract them. He tries to play the bongos for them, but the aliens aren't buying it. Since they haven't gotten their dinner, the Snabulax elect to destroy the Earth and fire up their cannon. Just in time, though, the wish is up and Mrs. Turner and Wanda return. Wanda poofs up dinner for the Snabulax, but they get called home by their wives and leave, making this sequence totally pointless. The guys have their half-assed reunions with the women in their lives to show that nothing has changed. And that was desperate without Housewives. Yeah, it sucked. Not only have they done this premise before, but this episode is void of substance. It's just one joke for 11 minutes with a forced climax that holds no relevance and doesn't even go anywhere. The sexism here isn't offensively bad, but it's definitely lazy as fuck. And really, episodes like this one just spit in the face of the boy who would be queen. Now it feels like that episode was made as some license to continue engaging in sexist gender roles. I'm rating it a 4 out of 10. It's a pathetic slag of an episode where nothing happens. I don't think I ever told you guys that I'm a pretty big fan of Mortal Kombat. I did that one commentary back in 2019, but I don't think that really got across that I'm a fan of the series. I haven't owned a game since MK vs. DC, but I did rent all 3 of the NRS games on PlayStation Now, and I can say that I thoroughly enjoyed them. Now, when you're a decently popular game franchise that's been running for 30 years now, you're bound to have some tie-ins down the road. And boy, has that never been truer than with this series. We all know about the shitty Mortal Kombat movies that have been kind of a meme among the community, given their awful stories and even worse acting. But at the very least, we did get Kerry Tagawa as Shang Tsung out of them. But if you want to know the worst cash-in they've ever done, it's the 90s cartoon, Mortal Kombat Defenders of the Realm. It's not as well known as the movie franchise, but anyone who does know of it is savvy on how horrendous it is. It ran for 1 season in 1996, and the way it was handled almost made it look like it was a half-assed attempt at slitting the series' throat early on in its life. So what exactly does this thing do wrong? Well, for one thing, it's a kids show. Yes, you heard that right. They took a fighting game that is so notoriously violent that it was one of the catalysts for the ESRB rating and adapted it to be suitable for 7-year-olds. You can't make Mortal Kombat without graphic violence. That's like making Emerson, Lake, and Palmer without Emerson and Lake. Speaking of exclusions, the show also omits several important characters from the games, such as Molina, Sindel, Kung Lao, Goro, Kintaro, and perhaps the biggest sin of all, Johnny Cage. Baraka, Reptile, and Jade do at least get XPs on themselves, though. Though I question why the fuck they go through the trouble of that instead of just grabbing the actual characters. In fact, the only good thing they did was introduce Quan Chi. That just leaves me with the story. Apparently this show takes place after the events of Mortal Kombat 3, but I highly doubt it's canon, and that's for the better. To give a good look at this show, I'm going to start with this first episode, usually a good starting point. This episode starts out with a wolf prowling in a cave. It stumbles upon Nightwolf in a command center of some kind, furiously typing away at a control panel. The wolf pounces on Nightwolf and they tussle a bit. This is actually Nightwolf's pet, Kiba. He tells it to settle down because he's busy, and literally a second later gets a transmission from Liu Kang.
Nightwolf, this is Liu Kang. Do you read?
You're gonna have to speak up!
Yeah, I'm not playing around or anything. The audio balancing here is that bad. For some reason, they decided to have Liu Kang be quieter than the background music. Just because he's speaking through a live feed doesn't mean you guys have to emulate the actual audio problems that come with it.
Read and see. Satellite has you.
What is it this time?
Sensors are detecting cybers. That probably means Sector and Cyrex are behind this invasion.
Let us know when you have a head count. Out.
Ugh, the voice acting here. Why is it so flat? I'm not asking them to freak the fuck out, but they could at least be a little more concerned that they're getting bombarded. Instead, they sound like they're bored. I mean, I guess I can't blame them all too much. I'd be too if I was in this show.
Mortal Kombat begins again.
He said the title, guys! We cut to the heroes who are actually in the line of fire, and we get a nice sample of just how sugar-free the action in this show is.
Take it slow.
If it's Sector and Cyrax, we're not dealing with mindless cybernetics.
They better have brains, because they sure be ugly.
Let's start toasting those freaks!
Oh, yay! More bad voice acting! Here, though, they're not even trying to be consistent with the voice direction. Why are Stryker and Jax doing ASMR while Sonya is the only one with any emotion here? I know full-fledged voice acting didn't grace the games until Mortal Kombat 4, which came out after this show, so pinning down which each character should sound like probably wouldn't have been easy. But here it feels like they just randomized the voices and went with those. Sonya and Liu Kang charge the Cyber Link Way, and this shit happens.
Kitana?
Liu Kang.
You're all right. I was afraid fear is a far greater adversary than the one we are about to face.
22 cybers have entered so far. The dimensional portal is still open, so more could be on the way.
Not on my watch.
Hey guys, I have this wonderful new writing tool for you to use. It's called pacing. What the hell even happened here? Why did Liu Kang just randomly start looking for Kitana? Why was Kitana just conveniently sauntering through the flames in the midst of a battle? She is a warrior princess. Shouldn't she be, fighting? And why did they have a meaningless exchange to be even more needlessly interrupted by Nightwolf? This is the literal first episode. You can't write it as if everyone's up to speed. Take the time to introduce plot points and characters the correct way. You might be a few minutes late to lunch, but it'll be worth it, I assure you.
We have to keep the cybernetic units from reaching the city.
Duh! No kidding, Stryker.
Good fucking grief. This is really the personality you're giving Sonya? Did you forget that she's supposed to be an army brat, not a goddamn cheerleader captain? Now would be a good time to include Johnny Cage in this, you fucknuts. Don't just give his personality to a totally different character. The Earthrealm heroes charge the Cyberlink Way, and we get our first full-fledged action scene. It's so underwhelming. Everyone just stands around waiting for the other to strike. Guys, you know Liu Kang's supposed to sound like Bruce Lee, not like he's passing a kidney stone. Seriously, how do you even make that sound? In fact, a lot of the sounds are recycled in this scene alone. Even if the show isn't very high budget, you could at least make it less obvious that you're reusing assets. While the Earthrealmers are busy, Kitana squares off with Sector.
Surrender, Princess Kitana. We are not only superior fighting machines, we outnumber you 28-1.
Great, even he sounds like shit. The other characters are badly voice acted, but at least I can understand them. I had to replay what Sector said here twice to make out anything. Their fight scene is terrible too. Kitana literally one-shots him.
Good form, Liu Kang.
They're in love, can you tell? There's no better way they could have conveyed that than by staring at each other randomly. I am not screwing around here. That is legit how they pace this, by having an ear-splitting scream just interrupt their longing gazes. Did they not think about how dissonant that might have been? Actually, I'd be genuinely surprised if they thought of anything during production of the show. They continue fighting the Cyberlink Way some more, but they're hopelessly outnumbered. And then Cyrax comes in.
Annihilate.
It didn't look like they were gonna do anything else. Was that command really necessary? Sub-Zero then enters the fray, and begins wrecking house all by himself with zero effort. The heroes take note of this, and Jack suggests they join him.
Are you nuts? We can't trust Sub-Zero. He's a traitor to his own clan.
Hey, I don't want to marry the guy, but he's giving us the edge we need.
I don't like this either, but we must eliminate the cybernetic units.
Then what are we waiting for?
You were the only one who was hesitating. The question is, what are you waiting for? They let Sub-Zero do most of the work, and they end up putting Cyrax and the other cybers on the ropes.
Sonya, finish them!
You fail. After the Cyberlink Way retreat, Stryker seals the portal, something he shouldn't be able to do. Really, he's just a regular cap in the games. In fact, why didn't any of the following games give him cool abilities like that? So they chat with Sub-Zero, and we get a callback to the movies where Liu Kang fights Bi-Han. They even include the bucket of water trump card. Sub-Zero explains to them why he betrayed the Lin Kuei and where he disappeared to, yet again acting like this isn't the first fucking episode of the show, and is actually here to warn everyone that Scorpion is planning to attack. Now, this is before Scorpion became as iconic as he is to the series now, so he barely has any impact on this show, only appearing in 2 episodes. Raiden shows up to basically say what Sub-Zero already told him.
Don't start with me, Jax. I've been with the Elder Gods. We have another crisis.
That's old news. Frosty here beat you to it.
Oh, so you brought word of Scorpion's impending invasion. Interesting.
Why did he look like he was gonna strangle him there? Actually, Raiden's kind of a dick in this show. It's pretty funny how he implicitly threatens Sonya when she gets in his face. He sends them on their way, and we get treated to a boring scene of them flying back to base. Legit, the only thing that happens during this scene is pointless chit-chat. The episode would have been the same without it. They arrive at base, and while they're preparing for Scorpion's assault, the base comes under fire from enemy forces. Sonya immediately points fingers at Sub-Zero, claiming he betrayed them, but he maintains his innocence. The heroes fight off the invading aircraft, and suddenly this goes from Mortal Kombat to Ace Combat. It turns out the ones piloting that jet were Tarkatans. Jeez, talk about adaptational intelligence. By the way, they're called Nomads in this show. They weren't actually named Tarkatans until Deception. But for the sake of not confusing my audience, I'll be calling them Tarkatans. The Tarkatans breach the base and are led by Brak. If you couldn't tell, that's an anagram for Baraka. I yet again question why they didn't just use him rather than make an XP. It's not like he's unique from Baraka or anything. Nightwolf and Sub-Zero fight the Tarkatans, filling its side, and Sub-Zero confronts their leader.
Save the honor bull for someone who cares, traitor.
Okay, maybe this guy is unique from Baraka. He actually has lips. Sub-Zero beats the shit out of him in another poorly choreographed fight scene, and Raiden teleports the Tarkatans to a foreign realm of no name.
Okay, where's that two-faced frigid?
Easy, Sonya. He just risked his neck to help us.
I mean, if you call not even breaking a sweat risking your neck, then sure, why not? Sub-Zero is officially inducted into the Forces of Light, and Sonya apologizes for the hostility. Unfortunately, the alarm sounds again.
Combat alert! Big time!
Scorpion.
Mortal Kombat continues.
Not on my fucking watch! And that was Combat Begins Again. By the Elder Gods, this episode was trash. It was badly paced, had too much unnecessary dialogue, and the action was staler than Wonder Bread. You can tell this show was trying way too hard to be like the G.I. Joe cartoon, but it's unable to match its charm. I understand that the early Mortal Kombat games weren't very story-driven, so coming up with actual personalities for the characters might have been challenging, but with what they had to go off of, they didn't even try to make the characters believable in any way. You can probably chalk up much of my complaints to this show just not aging well, but that's moot judging how this show wasn't even well received when it came out. For what it's worth, the concurring movies had a better grasp on the characters than whatever we got here. I'm gonna have to give this episode a 3 out of 10, because on top of all the other problems it has, it's completely uninteresting. And that's not something I should be saying about a Mortal Kombat property.